Hear that? Nothing? Me neither. But that's the perfect spot for your company's name to step into the spotlight. Become an underwriter for As You Mic It and let every episode be your curtain call. Slip a note to podcast@pashakespeare.org for more information.
I thought you really had a button to push. Oh, I was excited to hear it.
I wanted to. I didn't bring this home yet. I haven't programmed this board yet. So it's just like, it's going to happen.
Welcome back to As You Mic It, the official podcast of Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival. I'm Jason King-Jones, Artistic Director of PSF. And as always, I'm joined by our co-hosts, Kim Carson, Director of Education and Community Engagement.
Hello.
And Associate Producer, Connie Behringer.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to 2026, everybody. Today, we are focusing on the women who anchored this season's stories. Now, across our lineup, we meet women whose resolve, wit, force, and resourcefulness shape the worlds around them. Their choices drive the action, their presence set the direction, and their voices stay with us long after the play's end. These characters show how women influence legacy through clarity, conviction, and the courage to speak and act on their own terms. So we're going to get started, and we're going to talk about the important roles that so many women play in this year's season lineup.
So the first thing that I would love to talk about, because I have opinions, is about Juliet.
Sure.
And Romeo and Juliet and
Yeah.
the women of that play in
Yeah.
general. Again, Shakespeare is writing in a time when it really is a man's world. Women are, the property of their father, and then they become the property of their husband, and the fathers decide who they marry and all of these things. So here is this very young woman in this play who is making a lot of decisions to shape her own life and her own path through this world. And I want to talk about her first. She pops into my head first because I feel like the truth of Juliet is different from how so many people think of her and describe her. I think people think of Juliet as this sort of like weeping, woe is me, what do I do now kind of character. And she's the furthest thing from that. She really fuels what's going on. She sends the nurse to sort of do her bidding and bring back information. Right. She sort of goes to the friar and says, you need to help me solve this. You need to do something for me. Right. She goes to you know what I mean? Like, she takes all of these actions that are incredibly brave, very smart, and she's a risk taker in a big way. And it's fascinating to me that for some reason, the idea of what Juliet has been sort of like in the zeitgeist, kind of like pared down to this like sad romantic girl. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And she's anything but that. Go ahead, Connie.
When I started looking more into Juliet, she is actually a very vibrant character. She has her own wit and she has her own energy where she is charming, and there is a lightness to her before all the heaviness starts to set in. And
there's a power to her as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as she starts to pull away from her familial obligations to her family when it comes to their legacy and when it comes to who she marries, how she moves on with her life, she really starts to empower herself. And as we go through, and everybody knows the story of Romeo and Juliet, but, she
I think everybody knows the outline of Romeo and Juliet.
I was going to say, I think people know the idea of Romeo and Juliet, but it's so much more than that,
Yeah, and I think that's why we tell the story and why we reinvestigate it through different people, a different interpretation of design, is to give life to these characters because they have such life in them. We know that their lives end shortly in this play. Juliet is young in this play, but as you're all saying, she's got so much power. She's a force to be reckoned with. She really does a lot of in that beautiful balcony scene that we all kind of know, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo. There's a lot of instruction and teaching that Juliet also does to Romeo. And like, do you love me? I know you're going to say yes, but if you swear, you're going to prove false because that's not what you should do. We pronounce it faithfully instead.
Right.
But if you do that, I might have to actually pretend that I don't love you, but I really do.
Right.
But do this well and do this right, Romeo. Don't screw this up because this is you caught me saying these things that you shouldn't have heard me say in the darkness because you trespassed, jerk. So you heard all this stuff you're not supposed to have heard, but since you did, you know how I really feel. So now you've got to do it right. And there's also that sense that like, you know, she's in love for the first time. I think that her chronological age often people get hung up on that, on her chronological age, as opposed to like, I think the point of it is about her experience, that her life experience has been limited up to this point. And this is her first love. And boy, does she want this thing to be right. And she's willing to instruct Romeo, who we know from when we first meet him has already been in at least infatuation with somebody else named Rosalind. But she doesn't know that. She wants this to be right. It's wild how she takes the reins, as you're saying, Kim, early on in this.
It's interesting to me because that makes me think of Rosalind too.
Rosalind
the woman,
from As You Like It.
Yeah. The woman teaching the male, you know, in the courtship, how to be better in the courtship. You know what I mean? Rosalind does it. Of course, it's a pants role. Rosalind is dressed in disguise as she does it. She finds her voice through disguise.
Right.
And she's dressed as a man at this point. And so, but it's interesting to me that connection. I love that you say like about the teaching of Juliet. That's really interesting to me.
Getting into Rosalind, you know, she's teaching Orlando how to view her. You know, she's not an object and she's not this imaginary thing to be put up on a pedestal. And she's saying, you know, look at me in a more adult way. Look at me as a whole person instead of this object on a pedestal.
Yeah, and also like don't take advantage of me just because you think you're the guy that you can show up whenever you want. Like you know, you owe me. You said you're going to be here at 3:00. You show up at 2:59 is what you show up.
And
right?
she makes it hard for him. She's like, I'm gonna show you what it's like. I'm gonna be really sweet to you one minute, and I'm gonna be mean to you the next minute, and then I'm gonna love you one minute, and I'm gonna hate you the next minute, and like she sort of like wants to put him through his paces to say love isn't always easy.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, when you bring up the idea of a pants roll, it really does show that she's able to find this sort of freedom of communication by presenting herself in a different way. When I think about the way Shakespeare in these different productions that we have done and that we are doing this season, you know, we see how women are escaping those gender roles that have been applied to them. And sometimes it is through disguise. And sometimes it is through taking on a different part of society. You know, we had started talking a little bit about Volumnia in Coriolanus.
Yeah.
And I was really looking through that from the point of view of a mom. You know, we want what's best for our kids. And we have that, you know, I think people who've listened long enough know that I'm a little bit of a tiger mom. Now, I'm not going to drive my son into just might is right kind of thing.
Sure.
But when you think about it, her son holds her hopes and dreams, and she's modeling him in a way that she can't model herself. You know, she has within her that kind of militaristic passion that she can't present out to the world because she's a woman. She can't speak freely. This is Rome. This is a time where women don't serve in the military. Women weren't a part of martial culture. So she's putting on him a lot of what a father's role might have been at the time, you know, and she is playing that role of father and mother. And I think it's just a different look at the way women are presented in Shakespeare.
For those who are listening who aren't familiar with Coriolanus, perhaps we need to take just a quick step back just to kind of give a brief plot synopsis, a super brief plot synopsis about Coriolanus and who Volumnia is in that play.
Why don't you do that, Jason?
Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
Very briefly, Coriolanus is a hero of Rome at the time, and he has defended the country through a lot of military service. We see him in a series of battles at the very first part of the play. We also see him be very distrustful of the populace, who are very angry with the government for not taking care of the lowest status people. But Coriolanus cares less about the public politics and cares more about protecting the state of Rome. And he does that through his military service. He shows himself valiantly, and the senators don't trust him because he's really good at that, and they're concerned that he'll become very popular. So they poison his popularity with the people and with the state. He finds himself on the outs, finds himself being banished by his own country. And he finds himself then aligning with some of his enemies to want to come back to tear Rome down. And the one person who seems to be able to protect him and to guide him through an ethical understanding of how he should actually behave is his mother, Volumnia. Mm-hmm. And so that's who this character is. She's the one person who seems to be able to kind of calm him down, get him to see the world differently, and he changes his behavior, he changes his actions because of his mother's input, and the Senate kind of knows that, and then they use him to save the city, to Coriolanus' own personal detriment. Mm-hmm. Not to give too much away, but that's generally what we're looking at when we're looking at this story. And Volumnia is carries a lot of mythology as this strong mother figure who is able to stop Coriolanus from attacking the city.
I think a lot of when I was looking at Volumnia, I was actually looking at it through a lens of Lady Macbeth and thinking about how she shaped the person that he became. She shaped this idea of his military power, and she pointed him in that direction, so that when it got to a point where she needed to sort of talk him down, the only person that can reach him is the person who made him act that way in the first place.
It's funny, we've got parents sitting around this table. Yeah. I wonder when we're reading these plays, how we're encountering them as both, a daughter, a mother, a spouse. What are those kinds of parallels that we're seeing in these characters, whether it be Volumnia, Juliet, Lady Capulet, or even as we turn in our attention to some of the other plays, and we're looking at Bernice in August Wilson's Piano Lesson.
When I was thinking about the piano lesson in that terms, from the perspective of a parent, you think about what our long-lasting legacy is that we're going to leave for our family. And when I look at Bernice and I see the power that she brings in the idea of not commoditizing the legacy, not looking at the legacy as a pile of money. And there is something to be said for that. Generational wealth is something that's really important to pass down. Right. And we think about these things as parents. Right. But at the same time, when you look at that piano, it becomes this keeper of the story. And a lot of times that has always been the mother's role. And that has always been the woman's role in a household, where we're the ones who hold the idea. We're the ones who hold the connections.
The family history.
Our family history. That's right. We hold the connections to who's that cousin and who is my mom's brother's sister. Well, that would be my mom. But you get the idea, where who are the people in our family? Yeah. But we are the ones who ultimately hold that responsibility of that familial knowledge. So when you look at someone like Bernice and she's looking at that piano, this is the story of where their family is and where they are now. And that's not something that is easy to put a price tag on. Yeah.
I'm of two minds about it. Because you want to hold your family's history with dignity and care.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you want to be able to provide for your children.
Sure.
And here is this piece, here's this object that could provide quite well for your children, right? And holding on to it for the history's sake. I really am. I think to myself, what would I do? Would I be in Bernice's camp, or would I be in
right? And I think the difference that we all have to just acknowledge as well is that because Bernice and her family came from a family of enslaved ancestors, and that piano has in it carved the history of their family, the actual faces, and some might think the spirits are held inside that piano of their ancestors, and that piano was carved by an ancestor. It was carved, and that on that piano are the faces of his wife and children who were given away to another white family.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, from August Wilson's standpoint, I don't think that it would be a question that you, Kim, or you, Connie, would ever be in the position to ask, because you wouldn't have that context,
history.
that kind of history.
Yeah.
So it's, and I think that's why Bernice doesn't see it necessarily as a economic commodity in the same way that her brother, Boy Willie, definitely sees that piano as a ticket to go back and buy the land that he and his family had to farm through forced labor,
right,
and torture. So for him, it is exactly, I think, as you're seeing it, Kim, is something that has monetary value and can be sold and can be practical. And I think for Bernice, perhaps she doesn't speak too much about it, but perhaps it's holding the spirits, but it certainly is holding their history. She is, however, teaching her daughter Maritha how to play piano on it, but she'll never touch it because it holds pain as well as legacy. And probably for a number of other reasons that I don't have context for, but that's what at least I've read into it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, though, we're talking about the women and the different power that they have. And some of them, like Rosalind, find power by stepping out of their particular roles. Bernice holds her power in the family. She is the kind of matriarch in a multi-generational household, with her uncle Doker living there and her daughter Maritha also living there. And she has a job as a domestic because that's the way that she's been able to find work in the Hill District in Pittsburgh in 1936. And her uncle Doker works for the railroad. And these are standard service-oriented jobs that have some steadiness to them. And she's got her husband died 3 years ago. So she's holding the memory of her husband, and holding the blame for some of the people in her family who may have contributed to that. But she's also as a suitor in Avery, who also came up from Mississippi with many of the folks in the Great Migration, and is now becoming a preacher. And so she's being sought after as a love interest. She's being sought after as a sister. She's being sought after in so many ways, and just trying to hold her own identity in all of this. When so many people kind of want a piece of her, is a very different kind of character to play than, say, the actors who were playing the women in the complete works of Jane Austen, who are exploring all of Jane Austen's characters and roles. So now for something completely different, in the same theater after the Schubert, after the piano lesson, we crack open this gem of this exploration of the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about some of the characters in that play.
So this play in particular, very similar to the complete works of William Shakespeare. It's an exploration and also like a romp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny. They change characters very quickly. A character goes missing at one point, and then they have to teach a, quote unquote understudy what to do and all of that stuff. So I think if you love Jane Austen's characters and works, you're going to love this play, but I think you're also going to love it if you know nothing about it as well. And what is so wonderful about Jane Austen's characters is that they live in their world completely. They sort of are aware of and accept their fates as like trying to be married off and all of that stuff. And at the same time, so many of these characters are fighting against it. And it's interesting to me to play in a world where you are both trying to find a husband and don't want a husband at exactly the same time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is a really difficult world, I think. This time period and these characters are living in a really tough spot.
Well, and I think that's part of the fun about Jane Austen.
Exactly.
When her characters are really identifying what their fate is and where they stand in their family finances. The idea is a lucky woman is a woman who is married off well, and someone who maintains connections. And I think that that's part of the fun of Jane Austen's characters is they recognize it, but they also push the men in their life to recognize that they have agency over their choices and they have agency over where they're going. They're not just going to marry someone because their father said that you need to marry the vicar because he is a good match and he's a good connection. You know, she has characters that create their own future and they define their own paths. And I think that's why there's this sort of lasting legacy of Jane Austen. I think that's why the characters in this play are so enamored of Jane Austen, because they see that this is really sort of that first foray into showing that women have that kind of agency and they're not just acted upon.
And I will say too, I'm a big fan of like the romance novel, like the fantasy romance genre. And Jane Austen, like these characters are sort of the first, like the enemies to lovers trope. Do you know what I mean? Like think about Mr. Darcy, you know, like, oh, she can't stand him at the beginning. And then she's like, oh, maybe he's nice. Okay, I really love him. You know what I mean? Like it's fun and satisfying to see, especially a woman in this time period who is like trying to find, I'm making quotation marks here, the right match, right? A good match. And then see somebody fall in love with somebody else's heart. It's really satisfying to see two characters, to watch that happen in what feels like a really authentic and lovely way.
And I think that's going to be a really great segue to our next act. So just to sum up, and no, we've not really touched on Irene Adler and Moriarty, and we really haven't, other than mentioning Lady Capulet or the nurse, we know that there are so many other really great characters, great female characters who are going to embody the worlds of the plays that are going to be a part of our 2026 season. These women really do give our season its shape. They steady their worlds. They confront what stands in their way, and they choose how their stories will move forward. So their strength, wit, and clarity deepen every production in the lineup and remind us why these plays continue to speak to our audiences. So that brings us to a piece that celebrates women whose voices have guided generations of readers. The complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged, draws on the intelligence, humor, and insight of Austen's heroines, and it takes a fun look at how their influence endures. Up next, actor, director, playwright, dramaturg, educator, and one of the co-authors of the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged, my friend Jessica Bedford is going to be joining us for our next conversation in Act 2.
Some stories fade, others become legend. Join our Bard and Beyond book club and uncover the legacies that inspire our storytelling. Visit pashakespeare.org/book club for more details.
Now, we're putting a spotlight on the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged. It's a witty, heartfelt celebration of storytelling, friendship, and the enduring power of Jane Austen's voice. So today, we're joined by a familiar face at PSF, actor, director, playwright, dramaturg, and educator, who also happens to be one of the brilliant minds behind the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged. Welcome, friend of the festival, Jessica Bedford.
Thank you, Connie. Thanks for that intro. It's nice to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here, actually. I'm really, really grateful that you made the time in your busy schedule.
Oh, my pleasure.
Absolutely.
Gosh,
yeah. You're deep into the semester now.
Deep into the semester, yeah. Yeah, we have about like 4 weeks left. So we're in it. It's exciting. It's good. But it's an exciting time. It's like when all the content that the students have been learning just starts to like coagulate in their beautiful brains and erupt in wonderful ways. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you are a growing part of PSF's legacy. And so as a director, you've been here as a playwright and as an educator. So how does the festival's overall Legends and Legacy theme for next season resonate with your own particular journey as a storyteller and as an educator?
Okay, so I'm a DeSales University alum, and I came to DeSales University because of the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival. And so it occupies this huge place in my mind. I don't want to come off sounding like braggy or egotistical or anything like that, but I think I'm a good theater maker, and PSF is absolutely a part of making me the theater maker that I am. I interned here as a student. I worked here as a young actor. When I started directing regularly, it was smaller companies, good companies, don't get me wrong, but smaller places. And I remember when I got my first offer to direct at the Shakespeare Festival, I felt like, okay, I've made it as a director. I'm up a certain level now. And to have the place that molded me be the place that lifted my career up in that way is so profoundly special. But the Shakespeare Festival, it's a community, it's a family. And so it occupies a huge place in my professional life, but also a huge place in my heart. When I talk about PSF being about community and being about family, the fact that my husband, actor Sean Close, also has found a home here. Most people would probably recognize him as Rosencrantz from last summer, or Slender from Merry Wives, the guy with the lollipop.
That's right. That's right.
That clown is my man and father of my children. And we love how often he's here on the festival stage as well.
We love Sean.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what are the different parts of PSF that you occupied?
Sure. So we call it Young Company now, but it was an apprentice and internship when I was a student. Yeah. And then I did Pride and Prejudice in 2011.
Amazing.
I played Jane Bennet. And I could play I'm not too much of an actor anymore, but I would play Jane Bennet until I was in my 80s. Everybody would be like, who is that old lady up there? Because it's such a joyful story to live in. And so it's like, when you saturate yourself in that world every day, my gosh, I'm like walking around humming all the time. It was a beautiful, wonderful experience. That production was directed by Aaron Hurley Sheffield, and it was really, really great, really wonderful, really strong. When I got my first offer to direct here, it was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, which similarly, that I'm actually going to say something controversial, particularly if you know my writers group and my play, but Sense and Sensibility is actually my favorite Austen novel.
Really?
So, I know.
Hot
take. The character of Jessica has a different favorite, but the real Jessica loves Sense and Sensibility. And one of the things that I find so magical about that story is that what the Dashwood sisters go through at the beginning, it's so terrible. It's so tragic, like the loss of their father, the loss of their home. And then all of a sudden, community shows up. It shows up in very real ways. It says, here's a home, here's a place to be, here's chosen family if biological family is not working out. And also here's a brace of woodcocks and a very funny neighbor and all of that stuff. And so the idea of a family just being rescued by their community just had such a powerful resonance for me on the other side of the pandemic. And we were launching it on the other side of staging that production on the other side of the pandemic. So that felt very special.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I did the Young Company tour. And then this past summer, I directed The Princess and the Frog Prince, which was just such a delight. I had so much fun in the room that at one point I said to JKJ, you've got to come to rehearsals because I'm not sure if I'm just having so much fun and is this thing any good or am I just having so much fun? So yeah.
Jessica is only saying this because I am in the room right now.
Also, it was both.
Yeah.
It was both.
Yeah. It was like inspired by my son's love of bubble guppies and things like that. And so it was the first thing I directed that my boys could come see. So that felt very special that happened here at PSF. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I'm just breezing in real quick just to say hi, Jessica. We're really excited that you're going to be coming back and that you're going to be directing the sequel and the Sheila the Magical, Princess and the Frog Prince Part 2, and that you're going to be directing the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged. I'm going to pop out and let the two of you continue your conversation, but thank you again for being a part of PSF. It feels, since you started the same year that I started, you started as a director here, rather the same year that I started as artistic director. It feels like you've always been a part of PSF, but I can't wait to listen to the rest of this interview on the actual podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, JKJ.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Without giving too much away.
Yeah.
How would you describe the complete works of Jane Austen?
One of my co-writers, actually the brilliant woman whose idea this was to put this piece together, Casey McMillan, describes it as a glass of champagne.
Ooh.
Yeah. Bubbles and effervescent, but a little bit of a hit. It's going to make you warm sometimes. Yeah.
Got a little tartness to it.
Yeah.
I love it. So why don't we talk about the work that you and your co-authors did? So
sure.
We have Catherine McMillan.
Yeah, we call her Casey. When I talk about Casey, that's who I'm talking about.
Okay. And then we have Charlotte Northeast. we have Megan Winch.
Yes.
And then we have you.
Me.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so what made you want to bring Jane Austen to life in this particular way?
Sure. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Casey was the one who had the idea for this piece, and she really just only had a title in her head. She only had a title in her head for a lot of years. And then a few years ago, oh, wow, more than a few years ago, whatever, we don't need to go into that. I'm going to put out my cigarette right now. We were working on this brilliant Lauren Gunderson play called The Revolutionists at Theater Horizon, which is the theater company that PSF partnered with to do Penelope.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the cast playing Marie Antoinette, and Charlotte was in the cast playing Olympe de Gouges, radical feminist playwright from the French Revolution era. And Megan was in the company as dramaturg, and Casey was directing. And we just found that like our brains meshed so well. We had so much fun working on that show. It was irresponsible. I mean, the humor that we were finding, it was just so dumb. And we were getting to know each other. Like we knew each other before, but I think really on that show we were becoming friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey sort of realized that we all had this sort of, I can't call myself an Austen scholar. I am not an Austen scholar, but I am an Austen superfan. And it was while we were working on that show on The Revolutionists and getting to know each other that Casey realized that, hey, these women that I'm becoming really good friends with, these women that I'm really enjoying working with, they all love Austen as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so she brought the project to us. She's artistic director of a company called Tiny Dynamite in Philadelphia. And she said, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants to be. I know that I like working with you, with the three of you. And I know that you know and love Austen. And here's the title that's swam through my head for years. And what if we start to just really try to work out something? And one of the original writers, somebody who did not remain on the team, was an actor in Philadelphia by the name of Harry Smith.
And
Harry. He was Harry. He was on board because it's Austen. You need a fella. You need a handsome fella.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry knows a lot about Austen as well. But as we were very, very early in the writing process, Harry actually booked a gig in New York and left the team.
So for people who are going to be joining us this summer, that's actually the catalyst for the whole. I don't want to call it chaos, but that's the catalyst for the one of the through lines for the rest of the play.
Yeah. Oh God, we lost the dude. It's Austen. We need a dude. Yeah.
I think what I love about reading through this play is that when I look at it, it's almost like a fan letter to Jane Austen. It really brings a lot of her work to life without being very precious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a nice compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really captures a lot of Jane Austen's humor, her wit.
Yeah.
But in a really more modern way.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about that. Like if we're going to try to adhere to Regency gender expectations and whatever, as we're writing this thing, we're not going to get very far. A big question was like, who would Jane Austen be today? And we sort of decided that she could handle some humor, some funnies, even as it gets occasionally bawdy. I should say that in the writing process, my friends and I, we would just like meet up, and somebody would probably open some pink wine, and we would just start chatting and writing and chatting and writing and sipping wine and things like that. So it was a very a stream of consciousness way of tackling it. And so sometimes it's just like there's stuff in the script that it's like, oh man, I only wrote that because I knew it would make Megan laugh, and now it's like in print, it's in there.
It's locked in place now for the rest of the world to see.
My idiocy has been published.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny though. I mean, there's so much there, and we were talking a little bit earlier about this, but I was making a big list of sort of the meta narratives as I'm going through the play. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit is there's this great underlying commentary on feminism and romantic ideals and storytelling authority.
Yeah.
And so how does those kinds of themes about reclaiming the narrative fit in with your own artistic voices.
I've told this story before. I actually referenced it in my notes for the quill when I was writing for Sense and Sensibility. But it is so a part of the generative process of putting this play together for me that I'm going to repeat it here.
Sure.
I was away for a writer's retreat where we were like taking a bunch of classes on things and then time to write and read each other's things and stuff like that. And one of the classes that you were supposed to go to was just called very vaguely the Western Canon. That's it. And
That's very specific.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's a lot. So I show up, and the professor is an older gentleman, and he launches and he says, the first thing I want you to understand is what we're not going to be talking about in this course. And he said, the first thing out of his mouth, he said, no marriage plot material. And he just went, so that's to say, no Jane Austen. And I'm like getting hot right now thinking about how angry that made me. Like, arguably, if we're talking about the Western canon, one of the greatest writers of the Western canon, and he just instantly dismissed her work because they have happy endings sometimes.
Yeah.
You know? Although I wouldn't argue that all those marriages are necessarily going to be happy marriages, but I got so mad. I felt like my friend who was sitting next to me, like, put her arm over my arm as if to be like, she was like, don't stand up, you know? And I didn't know how to, that is such a common response to Austen's work.
Yeah.
And it is such a dismissive statement about the real stakes of her world that she was living in.
Yeah.
I mean, women had no choice. They're living in patriarchal societies. They can, get married. They can become dependent on male relatives, or they can be destitute. So of course her stories, her novels are about navigating the path to marriage, because that was just life. That was just life for women at the time. And yes, a good marriage did save a life. The fact that he was so undermining the stakes just because it was quote unquote romance, when, I don't know, some of those marriages are romances and some of them are good friendships. And some of them, I mean, my God, I think of Charlotte Lucas, that's not going to be a happy marriage, right? Like, that's just her saving her skin.
Yeah.
And because the stakes are manifesting in a different way, because these characters are all female identifying, doesn't make them any less stakes than, I'm going to go ahead and say it, than Moby Dick or anything like that. And it infuriated me.
Yeah.
And I would also say too, that it is primarily an American dismissiveness of her work. I mean, in her home country, her face is on the 10-pound note.
Yeah.
She is way more respected over there than she is here for her absolute genius. It's very, a friend of mine who grew up in the UK, he said that he's like, you read Austen in school, Yeah. As I've been starting doing a lot of directing of Austen projects, I've directed Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. And I will say, who's read the book? And, I'll say it, a lot of the women around the table, their hands go up, and not a lot of the male identifying people, because we don't give her the respect that I personally, as a very biased superfan, feel she deserves.
I entirely blame Mark Twain.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking about that.
No, I know.
I think he had a really big part in, the way the United States feels about Jane Austen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, like when we were working on Sense and Sensibility, one of the young men in the young company, who was just like a devoted expander of his own mind, decided to read it, and was reading the book for the first time as we were staging it. And he came up to me and he said, "Yo, Jessica, this stuff is brilliant." And I was like, "Yeah, man,
that's amazing."
Yeah.
And I feel like you touched on it a little bit in your play, where you're talking about Jane Austen doesn't focus on stuff happening.
Yeah.
She focuses on the character.
Yeah.
And that makes the big difference. It's just, some people might look at it and say, well, it's a little slow. And it's just like, she really builds these beautiful people throughout her whole story as she's weaving these things. There's so many things that they're feeling. You see their journey, but not through stuff happening to them.
Right. It's about the expansion of their mind, the expansion of their hearts, the expansion of their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, me too. Oh, you actually, there was another branch off of what you were asking about her worldview and her importance and her feminism in the play. There's this really awesome book called Jane Austen, The Secret Radical by Helene Kelly. And it does a sort of deep dive into the larger dramaturgy of Austen's time period. Like Mary Wollstonecraft is writing during Austen's lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And just looking for the sort of intersections between these things, between Austen's world, and even in some of her own like family matters, like marriage actually being a high stakes thing. It's something you do to be able to live as a woman, but like, boy, make the wrong choice. And making that choice at like 16, 17, 18, or a little bit older. It's just like a really fascinating deep dive study into like where there are little Easter eggs in Austen's work that tie to her own biography and to other folks who were writing at the time, and specifically in feminist.
We'll be sure to link that in your show notes.
Do that.
I will. That sounds like a really great read. I'm going to have to put that on my list.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about how you would describe this play. And I'm not sure if champagne is going to be enough for some of our listeners, but it is rather difficult to come up with like a one sentence way to describe it.
Yeah.
It is a loving retelling in very quick snippets of some of the more seminal works of Jane Austen.
Yeah.
When we describe this for someone who is unfamiliar with this work, there's a lot of different kinds of plays that are out there right now. One of the things that we did a couple of years ago was the complete works of William Shakespeare Abridged.
Yeah. Casey absolutely owns up to that being a major inspiration point for her initial idea around this. So the complete works of Jane Austen Abridged, we cover the big six novels. We call them the big six throughout. And then we also have a section on her juvenilia writing. And that actually was partly because at one point it was only the big six. And then two of my friends went to JASNA, a Jane Austen Society of North America conference. And we're talking about the play. And they said, oh, we do the big six. And some very loving and knowledgeable Jane-ite there went, and not the juvenilia. And my friend went, oh, well, no. And then the very knowledgeable lady went, well, then it's not the complete works, is it?
If you can't get the deep cuts, it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. And we were like, challenge accepted. So back to the writer's table, we went and added it all in. Yeah. So we try to look at the spirit of each of those. Like, what is the sort of driving voice, which really is kind of tied to the main heroines in each of the stories. But so it was like, if Emma existed today, she might host a dating game show. She would be really good at that, right? Emma the matchmaker and things like that. So we try to come up with a style or a sort of way in to each of the pieces that kind of suited the marriage of Jane Austen's voice with her like leading heroine's voice on the piece. And then there were some other things like Charlotte, one of my good friend and one of my co-writers likes to talk about how Jane-ite culture is the original nerd culture.
Yeah.
That like Star Trek people need to back off because like we were there first. And yes, we do wear Regency costumes to our conferences as well. And so when we were looking at like Northanger Abbey, parody of a Gothic novel, super deep, dark, kind of nerdy. Oh, wait, Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. Yeah. So it was, it was kind of a organic process in that way.
Well, you bring up other different kinds of presentations of Jane Austen's work, and there is that sort of through line where it's not just about Jane Austen's work, but who's telling it and how are we telling it?
Yeah. And she has such like a, her lens on her characters is an external one, but it's such a loving one and it's such a humanist one. She's so, she doesn't just forgive foibles, she delights in them. And so I feel like it was sort of easy to marry her voice to Emma's. It was easy to marry her voice to Mary Ann's, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You talk about the BBC presentation of Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
And there's that moment where Darcy takes off his clothes and goes swimming in the pond over at Pemberley. And you did make an allusion to that. So are we going to be seeing anybody taking a swim?
Do we have ponds on campus? We'll do an immersive experience for that part. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I like the idea of just like, there are all these different ways that Jane Austen has been represented throughout media.
Well, and this play to me, you're talking about how to describe it. Actually, if I zoom out, this play is very much a love letter to Jane Austen. Absolutely. It's a love letter to my friendship with these wonderful women. In fact, so much so that when we first were running it in Philadelphia, KC was like, I think this thing has legs. I think we can take it everywhere. And I like wanted that to be true because I was proud of what we'd done. But I thought that there was so many little inside joke and references just to each other and our friendships that I thought like, oh, it can't possibly happen anywhere else. But so thrilled to be very wrong about that.
You are very wrong about that. I think that's the thing is we might not get the inside jokes, but we get the love and the humor in it. It's all there.
There's a production of it that's touring over in the UK right now. And it was really kind of amazing to go and watch, these actors from, a different country actually just completely see the love of our friendship on the page. It was really kind of surreal. But at any rate, the play is also a love letter to Jane-ite culture. It's a love letter to the Jane-ite nerds out there. And so that can't just be the books, the source material, beautiful and near sacred to me, though the books and the source material are. It's also got to be about those delicious film adaptations and the fights that Jane-ites have about is this one better than and what about have you seen this version of it from 1975 and no you can't possibly like the Keira Knightley no it's funny Andrea who is one of your PSF's house managers and I got into a fight in the lobby about the importance of Margaret in Sense and Sensibility. And there was some students nearby, like just watching us like go at it. And I was like, that is Jane-ite culture, right? So the play's a love letter to Jane. It's a love letter to my friends with these women, but it's also just a love letter to my fellow nerds out there. That's like, let's go deep. Let's have at it. Yeah.
Just a complete aside, while I was reading through, my brain kept like just flashing with Galaxy Quest. Have you seen Galaxy Quest?
No.
You have to watch this. Talk about a love letter to, Trek culture. It's, not about Trek at all. And it's a very strange and wonderful story, but it had that sort of that meta narrative going on where it's one of my favorite movies, but like I kept thinking about that, how it's just like, you see the love for the nerd culture.
Yeah. My first experience with Jane Austen was a study hall I had in my senior year of high school where I don't mean to shock you, but I was the kind of kid who liked doing homework. So I know I never had anything to do in study hall. And so I decided to give myself a reading list to read all the things that I hadn't read in English class, but I heard people talk about. And so I read Pride and Prejudice. And that feeling of, oh my God, I'm not alone.
No.
Oh, whoa. This whole world feels like my world in a different time period and whatever, but I understand the stakes of it. I understand the ache of it. I understand the joy of it. And it was just like, I want more. And 6 books in the juvenilia can't possibly be enough. I'm so sorry, beloved Miss Austen. It can't possibly. And so we have to build on it. We have to celebrate it. Yeah.
I was looking on Facebook and there's quite a few Jane-ite groups out there. And there's so many different things. And, you know, people will come up with questions like, I'm from a different country. I don't understand what this breakfast room is.
Yeah. Well, we'll help you with that. Don't worry. We have research.
I love it. It's so charming. And it's just, I love that it is, it's a loving conversation about Jane-ite culture as well.
Yeah. And definitely poking fun at ourselves.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
I hope that it's clear that we're poking fun at ourselves. I mean, the arguments that we would sometimes, when we were supposed to be writing, but we were actually just sipping wine and talking to each other about this thing that we all mutually loved. The arguments that we would get into sometimes was just like ridiculous, just ridiculous.
Well, it comes through in the writing.
Yeah.
You know, even when they're deciding which plays are going
which
on,
one to start with.
Which one to start with. You know, there's that underlying tension of like, well, this is not the best one to start with, or that kind of idea.
And what's funny actually is, you know, we were part of the original company, Charlotte and I. We played Charlotte and we played Jessica. And in order to create conflict in the play, we had to sometimes build in things like, well, this character doesn't like Mansfield Park, or this character doesn't like that. But it's not actually true of us as individuals. And I guess I'll give like a small spoiler. Jessica, the character, doesn't like Mansfield Park. Jessica, the person, does. But at any rate, it was after one performance, some lady came like scowling up to me in the lobby of the theater and was like, I can't believe you don't appreciate Mansfield Park. I want to strongly suggest that you give it a reread. And I was like, oh no, I do. Okay. We just had to create conflict because plays, you know? Yeah.
I love it. They just relate to that. So
but like I offended her. I offended her, you know, the character of Jessica, I would say, you know, so it was just like, okay, I see you, girl. I see you.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. So why do you think that Jane Austen's work, even now, continues to resonate so deeply?
Man, somebody asked me the other day at an event what my favorite play was, and I was like, I don't know that I can answer that. And so there's a weird way in which the list of her brilliance, I guess from my personal experience, the thing that makes me melt in her writing is actually her generosity. Like I was talking about before, about how she sits outside of her characters and she doesn't judge their foibles. I mean, she'll comment on them. Certainly, we get an awareness of that sometimes she thinks, you know, so-and-so is a little bit of a dum-dum or what have you, right?
Right.
But there's, even in those, I guess that is judgment. I should take that back. But even in those judgments, because there is such humor in it, I see such love in it. And I like, how could you get enough of that? And I think that her characters are so well crafted that it's just like, you know, I know a Mr. Collins. I'm sure you know a Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
Like, we know that guy.
Yeah.
We know that guy. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
I might have worked with a couple of Mr. Collinses.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and like I know a Lizzie Bennet. I think I might know 6. Like, and so there's something about the way that she understands the human spirit and and human folly that feels so utterly timeless to me.
I love that. I love that. You know, there was a really special moment that I want to share with you when Jason made the announcement about what the 2026 season was going to be. He said, and we'll have Jessica Bedford directing the complete works of Jane Austen, Abridged, and the audience squealed and clapped in a way that I wasn't expecting. It was so, people were delighted with that. And they were so nice. They were very excited about that moment. And I really do think that that's why a lot of people ran up and got that early Bard subscription because we announced it. And then we said, well, these early Bard subscriptions are going on sale. And people just ran to the ticket booth.
That's amazing.
They were so excited about that. I mean, it was really, really charming.
Yeah, that's the people's response to it. It's just been like such a gift to my fellow writers. And I mentioned that there's a tour of it happening over in the UK now. And I went over to see it in May. And, you know, the whole time when I knew that this really brilliant, wonderful company had picked it up, I was like, oh God, the reviews are going to come in and they're going to be like, these American idiot women have tried to take on our idol and it's irreverent and how dare they? And I pictured fingers shaking vigorously on the part of reviewers. And instead it's been nothing but like kind. It was wild to be in that theater. I went to see it in the little town of Bedford. Full house, packed to the walls, watching like everybody just like laugh. And I was like, well, okay.
Yeah. It's like watching your child go off to college.
Yeah, I guess. Sure. Definitely. Maybe even graduate school. I'm like, wow, this is great. Yeah.
Someone's getting a PhD. Well, that's amazing. And I'm so excited for you. And I'm so excited that we're going to be doing this next summer.
Yeah, it feels really special. PSF is such an artistic home to me. And to say like, to have been here as an actor, as a director, and now as a playwright is like, I don't know. Don't they call that something in hockey when you get the 3?
Hat trick.
There it is.
Hat trick.
Yeah, hat trick. Yeah. Tell me you only make theater without telling me you only make theater. I'm like, what's the language the sports people use?
Well, I keep thinking about, and then when people see this, there'll be a lot of moments with hats in this. So.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Don't you worry. We got a bonnet or two.
Yeah.
We're going to make you we got some on pier waists. We got a bonnet or two. There will be riding boots. Don't you worry.
Yes.
Please feel free to come in costume. Folks do it all the time.
Challenge accepted, Jessica.
Great.
All right. Well, the complete works of Jane Austen Abridged is a part of our 2026 Summer Theater Series, opening next summer on June 26th, 2026.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Jessica Bedford, thank you so much for being with us today.
How nice to chat with you. And thank you for making this time. Appreciate it.
Ready for an epic summer? Experience the Legends and Legacy season at PA Shakespeare Festival. It's a summer of unforgettable stories, rock and roll nights, and heartbreaking rivalries. Subscriptions to the 2026 Summer Theater Series are on sale now. Subscribe today at pashakespeare.org.
Act 3, a peek behind the curtain.
A peek behind the curtain.
As we enter into the new year, we really are setting our sights on the Summer Theater Series. The fall brings us time for reflection, for thought, for early planning, and January really starts to kick us into action. We thought that one of the things we could discuss in this peek behind the curtain is to talk a little bit about what does the design process look like? How do we go from knowing we want to do a play to actually realizing it on the stage, not just in the building of the scenery and the costumes, but how do we shape that world? So many of the important conversations happen in these early months between the director and the designers. And so we wanted to share a little bit about what that process looks like. I'm going to be directing Romeo and Juliet, so I'm having several of those conversations. Kim and I are going to be working together on the Play On Community tour of As You Like It. And those conversations are just in their early phases. But we just, in general, we'll talk about what does this process look like. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about when it's time to direct a show, what are the first steps? How do we get from hey, you're going to direct this play to now we've got a thing on stage that we're looking at and we're making notes on the color of a hat?
Yeah. Step 1, read the play. And I'm only being partly facetious there. Like it really is when you read a play for the first time, you sort of get a feel for it. You get an understanding of the characters, but reading it a few extra times and reading it with goals in mind, right? Going, how many different locations do we need to go to? What might this house look like? Really practical questions, reading the play and making notes for yourself of the practical questions. And considering those along with, well, what is the story we're trying to tell here?
Yeah.
Does this need to be literal? Can it be abstract? Is it better if there's nothing and it's all imaginary? Is it better if it's like total verisimilitude and everything is exactly real? All of these questions you start thinking about and discussing with a designer. If you've got one on board already, you start sharing these ideas. And one thing that I like to do as a director when I'm working with a designer, which truthfully hasn't been that often. I've mostly designed stuff myself that I've directed and built myself that I've directed. But when working with a designer, those first conversations are really, I will talk about what I think the play is about.
Right.
What are the important moments? What are the important ideas, themes, thoughts, feelings that I want the audience to go away with. And that's going to really illustrate and instruct the designer on which direction they're going to go. Then step 2 is how much money do we have? Another really practical thing.
Sure.
If you go, I would love this to be all really real. And you go, but we have 4 different places we need to be and we can't afford 4 different rooms. You go, well, what's a creative solution to that?
Sure.
How do we get the feel that we want, but also not put ourselves in debt, right?
Right. Well, and I think sometimes that's also a question. If the playwright has written a play with so many different locations, knowing that we're in a theatrical medium, there can't be necessarily an expectation that this is a film and we can go, we can be doing these things on location.
Right.
So there has to be some thinking behind what's framing all of this. Is it, as you said, what's the play about? How do we help the audience engage their own creative imagination? Because really the audience, they're the ones that help us complete the world, whether that's completing the design, completing the moments between the actors. Their own imagination really help flesh that out in detail. So if you have a play that has a lot of different locations, okay, so we're not going to go to all those locations, then what are we going to do? How can we create those changes?
One of the things that I was really excited about the other day was, first off, I don't usually take part in the design process at all. I don't usually get that peek behind the curtain. And one of the fun things that I really did get a chance to see is when James Iams showed Tom, the designer, the interior of a piano. And he said, I would like this to inspire the stage that you're going to create.
Right.
And being able to see the first drafts of how those pictures of a piano turned into something that is beautiful and can be on stage was really a wonderful peek behind the curtain, because I wouldn't have imagined that it was like that.
Yeah, it can often be, and sometimes as we know that a single picture can really evoke so much, that point of inspiration, and that's you read the play multiple times, you figure out what it is that's inspiring you. Sometimes you just think about the world around you, especially if you're doing a Shakespeare play, why this play now is one of the most important questions that a director and design team have to be able to answer. In order to then really move forward, because if there isn't a good reason for doing the play now, then please don't do it. Please find a reason why this play actually matters. Otherwise, there's really no point. We're just regurgitating old ideas, or we don't really have an idea, and that also becomes pretty apparent. But I think for James and for Tom Weaver, who's both the set and the lighting designer for the piano lesson, and James is the director, of course. That seeing if they can kind of let this image of what an inside of a piano might look like to help evoke the power that this particular piano is playing in their lives. So what you will see in the fully realized design, which is still months away, is going to be inspired by those images and by the work that this team is already doing. That's a pretty exciting part of the process, and I'm glad that you got to see that, Connie, and got to share it with our audience a little bit. So sometimes it can be that simple. It can be an image. Sometimes it is meeting with the designer, saying I think that this is what I'm thinking about, and then the designer then goes off and has some time to do their own research, and then says, okay, so I've been thinking about this play and I'm inspired by this setting, or here's a piece of artwork or a photo. I think that's a really great example. And now here are some options on what this world can be. Sometimes it's a costume designer finding a piece of a photo. I'm also reflecting on when we did The Producers, there was an ad. There was an image of an ad from the 1960s that really spoke strongly to the team on, okay, this is this color scheme, these lines, these angles. This is how we want to kind of express what the world can look like. And then, yes, here are all the practical things. Here's how, because we know what the budget is and we know where the location is. If we have a lot of things that can fly in and out, or wagons that can roll on and off because we have the room for it, then this is how we can clarify the storytelling points, how we can go into different locations. This is how the just shows kind of mechanically will move from place to place. Or if it's, we've got a budget, we've got $500 and we've got some props we can pull. Here's some paint to slap on some stuff. And then, if it's not in the physical world, then what else can it be? Is it through music? Is it through soundscape? Are we going to lights, right? Are we going to create all this world through these other elements? The basic elements that we're looking at scenery, what the scenic and physical elements and props can look like. We're looking at the lighting, color, angle, the amount of lights, whether we're using any special effects. We're looking at sound, or we're hearing sound. Sound is an important concept, sound and music, whether it's included or not, or it's being created. And of course, costumes. And how those costumes work together. And then the costume designer and the lighting designer and the sound designer are often like, okay, how we can make sure that this costume under this light with this paint all kind of work together so that we can create the effect that we want. So that kind of collaboration is critical for a team to actually have a cohesive design. And then ultimately it's the director who kind of makes those key decisions. And somebody like me as the artistic director often will sit in those meetings and go, this is all really great. We can't afford it. We can afford a half of what you want to do, or we can do this thing really well, but we can't do this thing. How do we rein in the creative process so that we can do it within our resources? And our resources are often time, money, people. And how do we manage those resources to then get us to where we want to go, so that when the show opens in front of an audience, it looks amazing and it stays true to our values of quality and relationship and education in Shakespeare. But often I'm thinking, like, where's the quality? How do we make sure that we maintain that quality? And do we sacrifice do we do fewer things really well than do a lot of things only kind of halfway?
Can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
So last season when we did the rep, we did Hamlet and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And there was a really strong tie connection to that. So there was a lot of reusable parts and things like that when you talk about the design on stage. How much carryover is there going to be this season? Because we have Romeo and Juliet and we have Moriarty. Is there going to be any kind of shared design? Is there a shared ideation of these things? Where's the creative process in that? And like, how much work are you going to have with Matt Pfeiffer?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of shared backstage space. Yeah, I at this phase in the process, the scenic designer is Brian Sidney Bembridge, who designed both Hamlet and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead last year. This year, I'm directing Romeo and Juliet. Matt Pfeiffer is directing Ken Ludwig's Moriarty. Brian is designing the set this year. And in the early conversations, there's not a lot of shared physical stuff. So it may look more like, here are some elements that are on stage for Romeo and Juliet. Those elements will go away either on a wagon or they fly away or whatever. And then this other space is going to be held for Moriarty. So then that becomes also kind of a math and logistics and Tetris kind of puzzle of, here's the backstage space. Where do things go? So
that's another really kind of awesome challenge for the designers that we have here, because that happens on the second stage space too, where we're changing between the children's show and the, either Coriolanus or whatever's happening in that,
or the Jane Austen, right?
In that room at the time, and every day it needs to be changed over in a decent amount of time. So that's another design element that adds a whole other challenge. It does. And that is one of the special, unique things about a summer festival like Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival Summer Theater Series is because we're programming so many things in the spaces, we're maximizing the time we have in the space. We're programming a lot of stuff in there in order for the children's show to happen, whatever the children's show is, and then move on into a matinee or an evening show of a number of other shows. Yeah, there has to be thoughts on what does that changeover look like? How much time do we have? Who are the crew members that are going to be doing that, who are not busy doing anything else, so that we can do that changeover quickly and then be ready for the house to open for the next show. In the main stage, it is similar between the two shows, between R&J and Moriarty. There will be some changeover time, and how do we build that in? And that is a peek behind the curtain. Again, happy 2026. That's it for this first episode in the new year of As You Mic It.
A special thanks to Jessica Bedford for joining us today. And a happy belated birthday to Jane Austen, who would have been 250 years old this past December 16. For all of us here at As You Might It and Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival, thank you for listening, and we'll see you at the Buddha.
Thank you for listening to As You Might It, a Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival presentation recorded on the beautiful campus of DeSales University. Our music is by Cedric Lamar, with hosts Jason King-Jones, Kim Carson, and Connie Behringer. For more information on our summer theater series, giving opportunities, tickets, and more, visit pashakespeare.org. Be sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you at La Buddha.
Behind every standing ovation is a network of patrons who know that theater changes lives. With tickets funding only half the cost, PSF counts on contributions to produce world-class theater, cultivate new audiences, and nurture future generations of artists. Give today at pashakespeare.org/support. Great theater is a collaboration both on stage and off.